Have you ever wondered what you would do if the person who made you successful suddenly erased your name in front of the entire world? What if the company everyone admired was secretly standing on your shoulders while someone else took every bit of the credit? And what if the moment they destroyed your career was also the moment they unknowingly destroyed their own empire? Stay with me, because this story begins with the worst day of my life, but ends in a way nobody could have predicted. My name is Ethan Carter. For 12 years, I worked inside one of the fastest growing technology companies in America. People believed our CEO, Olivia Grant, was a visionary. Themedia called her the Queen of Innovation. Investors trusted every word she said. Employees worshipped her. But I knew a secret that nobody else knew. The empire everyone admired was built on decisions she never made. It was built in mine. I was never the face of the company and never wanted to be. I preferred working behind the scenes, solving impossible problems, finding investors, calming nervous partners, fixing disasters before anyone even noticed they exist. If something went wrong, if fixed it. If a $1 billion deal looked impossible, and made it happen. If investors were ready to leave, I convinced them to stay. Nobody outside the company knew my name. And honestly, I was fine with that. I believe loyalty mattered more than recognition. That belief would become the biggest mistake of my life. Everything changed on a Tuesday morning. The company announced a live global meeting. Every employee from every office was required to join. Thousands of workers logged in from around the world. Investors were watching, news reporters were watching, even our biggest competitors were watching. Nobody knew why the meeting had been called. No, even me. I arrived early carrying my laptop and a note filled with plans for the next quarter. The atmosphere felt strange. People avoided eye contact. Conversations stopped whenever I walked past. Something felt wrong. Then Olivia walked onto the stage. She smiled like someone who had already won. The camera started rolling. She thanked everyone for another successful year. She spoke about leadership, about sacrifice, about difficult decisions. Then she looked directly at me. Stomach tightened. She called my name and asked me to come onto the stage. At first, it thought I was about to receive an award. Maybe she was finally recognizing years of work. Some of my coworkers even smiled at me. I walked toward the stage while thousands of people watched online. The lights were bright. The applauses slowly faded. Olivia looked straight into my eyes. Then everything changed. She said our company had reached a point where it needed stronger leadership. She said some executives had become obstacles instead of assets. She said difficult examples had to be made before I could understand what was happening. Security guards walked toward me. Every camera turned in my direction. My heart started racing. Then she announced that effective immediately, I was being terminated for poor performance and lack of leadership. The room became completely silent. It thought I had misheard her poor performance. After 12 years, after saving this company more times than anyone could count, she continued speaking as if I was invisible. She thanked security for escorting me out. She wished me luck in my future. The audience awkwardly clapped. Some people looked shocked. Others looked relieved that it was not them. I searched the face of executives I had worked beside for years. Not one of them stood up for me. Not one security politely asked me to leave. I picked up my notebook, closed my laptop, and walked out without saying a single word. As the glass doors closed behind me, I could still hear applause from inside. That sound stayed with me. Not because I was angry, because I realized something. They truly believed and needed them. They had no idea that I had personally introduced every major investor who kept the company alive. They had no idea every $1 billion funding agreement contained a private relationship built on trust with men out the company. They had no idea the next funding round worth more than $3 billion had not been signed yet. And they definitely had no idea that every investor expected to meet me the following Monday. It sat in my car staring at my phone. It buzzed once. Then again, one message came from a board member, another from a senior investor, then another from someone whose name made my heart stop. The largest investor in the company's history had sent only 6 words. Where are you? We have a problem. I looked back at the company headquarters on the last time. For the first time in 12 years is mild, because they had not fired an employee. They had just fired the only bridge holding their empire together. And by tomorrow morning, someone inside that building was going to realize the biggest mistake of Olivia Grant's career had already begun to destroy everything she had built. Today, after I was fired, the world still believed Olivia Grant was winning the headlines, her leadership. The investors still trusted her. The employees still showed up to work believing the company was stronger than ever. But behind the beautiful glass walls of that headquarters, something was already falling apart. Because there was one thing Olivia did not understand. A company is not built by the person standing on the stage. It is built by the people, quietly holding everything together when nobody is watching. And she had just removed the person who knew where every weakness was hidden. Before we continue, I want you to remember this moment, Because in just a few hours, the same people who watched me get humiliated in front of the world would be calling my phone begging me to come back. But by then, it would be too late. The first call came at 7:13 in the morning. It was from Daniel Brooks, the chief financial officer, the same man who sat in the front row during my firing, the same man who avoided looking at me while I walked out to stare at this name on my screen. For years, Daniel and I worked together, almost every day with solved financial disasters nobody ever heard about. We protected the company during its hardest moments. But yesterday he said nothing. I let the phone ring, then again, then again. Finally, I answered. His voice sounded different. Not confident like before, not like the powerful everyone respected. He sounded worried. He asked where I was. I told him I was somewhere. I was not being publicly embarrassed. There was a long silence. Then he said something I never expected to hear. The investors are asking questions. I looked out of my apartment window. The tie was moving like nothing had happened. People were going to work. Cars were driving through traffic. Everyone was living a normal day, but inside that company, panic had already started. I asked him what kind of questions he hesitated. Then he admitted that several major investors had frozen upcoming payments. They wanted confirmation that I was still involved with the company. I almost laughed, because for years, Olivia told everyone that investors believed in her vision. She never told them the truth. Investors believed in stability, and stability had my finger proud. Incelover asked Daniel one simple question: why did you let her do it? Another silence. Then he finally answered, because nobody thought you would actually leave. That sentence told me everything. They never respected me. They only depended on me. There is a difference. They thought I would always be there fixing problems, saving projects, cleaning up mistakes. They believed my loyalty was unlimited. They were wrong. After the call ended, I opened my laptop, not because I wanted revenge. At least that is what it told myself. I opened the documents I had saved over the year. Not company secrets, not stolen information. Just my own records, my own agreement relationships. The proof of every deal I had personally helped create. Then I found the document that changed everything, a private investment agreement from 3 years earlier, an agreement Olivia had completely forgotten about. It contained a condition that if I was removed from the company without causes, several investors had the right to review their commitment. At the time I created that condition, because I wanted to protect the company from sudden leadership change. As it never imagined, I would be the person it protected is at the staring at the screen. The woman who fired me live in front of thousands of people had accidentally activated the one could bring her entire empire down, but it still had a choice. I could ignore it. I could walk away. I could start a new life and forget everything, or I could finally stop protecting people who never protected me. Then my phone rang again. This time it was someone I never expected, Olivia Grant. I watched her name appear on my screen. The same woman who smiled while destroying my reputation, on the same woman who made me look like a failure in front of the entire world. Now she was calling me. I answered. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she said something that shocked me. She told me she wanted to meet, not as my boss, not as the CEO, but as someone who needed my help. I almost refused. Then she said the reason she needed to talk to me, and those words changed everything. Because Olivia had discovered something hidden inside the company, something that even she did not know about, something that could destroy both of us. I agreed to meet her, but I had unconned it. This time she was going to tell me the truth, because the next conversation would reveal the real reason she fired me. And it was not because of my performance. It was because someone inside the company wanted me gone, and Olivia had just dealt this time in 12 years. I walked back into the building. I had been forced to leave, but this time I was not walking in as an employee. I was walking in as someone they could no longer control. The same security guard who escorted me out days earlier opened the door for me. He looked uncomfortable. He avoided eye contact, because everyone inside the company knew what happened. The video of my firing had gone viral. Millions of people had watched. Olivia Grant removed me from the company like I was nothing, but now those same people were watching the company fall apart. The stock price had started dropping. Investors were demanding answers. Employees were whispering in hallways, and the woman who once looked unstoppable was now searching for the one person she tried to destroy. Me entered the conference room where Olivia was waiting. She looked different, not physically, but emotionally. The confidence was gone. The person sitting across from was not the powerful CEO from the stage. She looked like someone who finally realized she had made a terrible mistake. She told me she owed me an explanation. It stayed silent, because for years I had listened to her explain why everything was my responsibility. Now it was her turn. She opened a folder and placed it on the table. Inside were documents I had never seen before, emails, financial reports, private conversations. Then she said something that surprised me. She told me she should not fire me because she believed I was failing. She fired me because someone convinced her that I was preparing to replace her. I looked there and asked who. She hesitated. Then she said a name, Marcus Vale, the company's chief strategy officer, the man who had joined Ed the company 2 years earlier. The man everyone thought was Olivia's closest advisor, the man who always supported her decisions in public. But behind closed doors, she was building something else, a plan Marcus had been slowly convincing Olivia that I was becoming too powerful. He showed her carefully edited information. He made her believe investors trusted me more than they trusted her. He made her believe I was secretly building influence to take control of the company. And the worst part, he had evidence, not real evidence, manipulated evidence. Small pieces of truth mixed with lies, enough to make anyone suspicious. Olivia admitted that she made the biggest mistake of her life. She trusted someone who was never loyal to her. I looked through the documents again. Then I noticed something, one detail that Marcus had missed, adding a mistake. A date did not match a conversation that could not have happened the way he claimed. Because I knew something Marcus did not know. I had created the original system that tracked every major decision inside the company. And that meant I knew exactly where the evidence had been changed. Edad Olivia, 4 years I had protected this company from outside threats. But now the biggest threat was sitting inside it. It told her I would help, but not because it forgave her, not because I wanted my job back. I had a different reason. I wanted the truth to come out. She asked what it needed. I gave her one condition. The next company meeting had to be lived, the same way she destroyed me. Because if Marcus wanted a public victory, I would give him a public defeat. 3 days later, the entire company gathered again. Thousands of employees logged in. Investors watched, media watched. Everyone expected Olivia to announce a recovery plan. Nobody expected what happened next. Marcus walked onto the stage as Mealing had thought they had already won. He started talking about the future of the company, about new leadership, about a new direction. Then Olivia interrupted him. She looked at the cameras and said there was someone who needed to explain what really happened. The doors opened and I walked onto the stage, the same stage where my career was destroyed, the same stage where everyone watched me leave, but this time I was holding something Marcus Nev. Eric expected me to have proof, and when I placed the first document on the screen, Marcus stopped smiling, because he realized one thing. The person he tried to remove from the company was the only person who could expose him, and the next few minutes would decide whether he would keep his empire or lose everything. The room was completely silent. Thousands of employees were watching. Investors from around the world were watching, and standing in front of all of them was the man who had secretly planned my downfall. Marcus Vale. 3 days earlier, he believed he had removed his biggest obstacle. He believed I was gone forever. He believed Olivia would never question him, but had made one mistake. He underestimated how well I knew the company, and he underestimated how much damage the truth could cause when it finally came out. Before we continue, remember this moment, because what happened next was the moment the person who destroyed my reputation started losing everything he had built. It stood on the stage where Olivia had fired me. The same cameras were pointed at me. The same people who watched my humiliation were now waiting for my revenge. But I did not come there to scream. I did not come there to insult anyone. I came there with facts. I looked at the screen behind me. The first document appeared. It was an internal report showing changes made to financial projections. At first, nobody understood why it mattered. But then I explained the numbers had been changed to make the company appear weaker than it actually was. Why? Because someone wanted investors to panic. Someone wanted the board to believe a leadership change was necessary. Someone wanted Olivia to make a desperate decision. And that decision was removing me. Marcus stood up immediately. He tried to interrupt. He said I was twisting information. He said I was trying to damage the company because I was angry about being fired. For a moment, everyone looked at me, waiting to see how I would respond. As mild, because anger was exactly what he expected. But I had something better. Proof. It showed the second document, a private communication between Marcus and an outside consulting group, A Group, that had been secretly preparing to buy parts of the company after its value dropped. The room changed instantly. People whispering. Investors started checking their phones. Marcus stopped talking because the truth was becoming impossible to hide. He was not trying to save the company. He was trying to weaken it. He wanted the company to fall just enough so he could become the person who rebuilt it. He wanted Ed to become the hero after creating the disaster. But there was something even bigger. It showed the final piece of evidence, our recording of a private meeting, a meeting where Marcus explained his entire plan. He explained how he convinced Olivia that I was dangerous, how it created suspicion around me, how he used her fear to remove me. The person who trusted him the most was the person he manipulated the easiest. Olivia sat there watching everything. For the first time, she understood what she had done. She had destroyed the person who was protecting her while trusting a person who was attacking her. Marcus looked around the room. The confidence was gone. The same man who had planned everything was now searching for a way out. Then he said something nobody expected. He admitted he had made mistakes, but claimed he did it because the company needed stronger leadership. He tried to turn himself into a victim. He tried to make everyone believe his actions were necessary, but the non-investor stood up. An investor who had been with the company since the beginning. He looked at Marcus and said one sentence: "The company did not need a person who could create problems and then pretend to solve them." The room went silent because everyone understood Marcus had lost, but the story was not over, because after the meeting ended, something unexpected happened. The board asked me to come back, not as an employee, not as a manager. They offered me position, and never imagined that position above everyone who had ever ignored me. But before I could answer, Olivia stopped me in the hallway. She looked at me and apologized. Not the kind of apology powerful people usually give, not a fake apology to protect their image area alone. He admitted she was wrong. She admitted she let her destroy the person who believed in the company more than anyone else. Then she told me something that changed everything. She said Marcus was only one part of the problem. There was another person involved, someone much more powerful, someone who'd been controlling events from the beginning. Someone who wanted me gone long before Marcus entered picture. I looked at there and asked who. She handed me folder. Inside was one name, a name I recognized immediately, because it belonged to someone it trusted completely. Yes. Omian, who had been beside me from the very beginning, someone who knew every secret, every weakness, every decision. And now I realized the person who betrayed me was not my enemy. It was someone I called a friend. The most dangerous enemy is not always the person standing against you. Sometimes it is the person you pretending to protect you. For 12 years, I believed I knew everyone inside that company. I knew the executives, I knew the investors, I knew the people who celebrated our victories and the people who disappeared during our failures. But I never expected the person who would try to destroy me would be someone who knew my story better than anyone else. Someone who knew my dreams, someone who knew my fears, someone who knew exactly where to hurt me. Before we continue, remember this, because the next discovery would change everything. It thought I knew about loyalty, trust, success. I opened the folder Aaliyah gave me. The first page had a name written at the top, David Carter, my own brother. For a moment, it thought it had to be a mistake. My mind refused to accept what I was seeing. David was not just family. He was the person who encouraged me when nobody believed in me. When I started working at the company years ago, he was the one who told me I could build something meaningful. He was the one who celebrated every element, or at least it thought there was. I looked through the documents again. At first, there was nothing obvious. No messages saying, destroy him. No direct evidence of betrayal. Just meetings, financial connections, private conversations, small pieces that created a much bigger picture. David had been communicating with Marcus for almost a year. But why? What could he possibly gain from destroying me? Then I found the answer. It was not about money. It was about jealousy. For years, David lived in my shadow. Every family gathering was the same. People talked about my achievement. My career, my success. Nobody noticed how much it bothered him. Nobody noticed the way his smile disappeared whenever someone praised me. I always thought that was proud and never imagined he was keeping score. But the worst discovery was not that he wanted me to fail. It was that he helped create the story that got me fired. He was the person who gave Marcus information about me, my habits, my relationships with investors, my plans for the future, everything, heck of them, the tools they needed to make me look dangerous. Is that there for hours trying to understand how someone could. How someone who shared my childhood could become the reason I lost everything. Then my phone rang. It was David. I stared at the screen. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Another part of me needed answers. I answered. For a few seconds, there was silence. Then he said something unexpected. He said he knew I had found out. I asked him, why would you do this? His answer was something. I never forgot. He said, because you always got everything. And never had I asked him what that meant. He said it meant respect, recognition, power. He said people saw me as the genius behind the company. He was just my brother, the person standing next to success but never receiving any of it. I listened quietly, because I finally understood something. This was never about the company. It was about someone who spent years comparing his life to mine. And instead of building his own path, he decided to destroy mine. But then David said something that made me realize there was still more happening. He said Marcus was not the person who started the plan. Marcus was only a tool. Someone else had been pulling the strings. Someone with access to the highest levels of the company. Someone who wanted the company to collapse and knew exactly how to make it happen. I asked him, who he refused to answer. Then he said something even more shocking. He said if I wanted the truth, it needed to look at the original founder of the company, the person who created everything before Olivia became CEO, a person everyone believed had disappeared from the business world years ago. I ended the call and immediately searched through old company records. Then I found something impossible. The founder had not disappeared. He had been quietly buying company shares for years, preparing for something much bigger, a takeover, and suddenly everything made sense. My firing was not the goal. It was only the first move. Their all plan was to destroy the company from inside. Take control when everyone was desperate and rebuild it under a new owner. The person behind it all was someone who knew the company better than anyone, someone who created it, someone who believed it belonged to him forever. The next morning I received an invitation, a private meeting, one person attending, the original founder of the empire, the man who started everything, the man who had just tried to end everything. And when I walked into that meeting, he looked at me and said the words I never expected to hear, "I have been waiting 12 years for you to discover the truth." The most terrifying moment is not when your enemy attacks you. It is when you discover that everything you believed about your success was built on a secret for years. It thought I was fighting to save a company, but I was wrong. I was fighting to uncover the truth about why the company was created in the first place. And the man sitting across from me was the only person who knew the entire story. The founder, the person who started the empire before Olivia ever became its CEO. The person everyone believed had walked away, but had never really left. His name was Richard Hale, and when I entered the private meeting room, he was sitting there calmly like he had been expecting me for years. No surprise, no fear, just a quiet confidence, the same confidence I remembered from when I first joined the company. Richard looked at me and smiled. He told me I had finally become the person he always knew I could become. I immediately asked him one question. Why did you let this happen? Why did you allow Marcus to manipulate Olivia? Why did you allow me to be humiliated in front of the entire world? He looked at me for a long time, then he said something. Nank that made me angry, he said, because I needed to know the truth. It told him that was not an answer. He explained that years ago when he built the company, he created a system based on loyalty. He wanted people who cared about the mission, not just people who wanted money and titles. But over time, something changed. The company became too focused on appearances. Executives cared more about power than progress. Leaders cared more about protecting their image than protecting the people who built the company. And according to Richard, I was the last person inside the company. Hostile understood the original vision, but there was one thing I did not understand. If he knew all of this, why did he not stop it? Richard leaned forward and said something that shocked me, because if it stopped it, you would never see who you really were. I hated that answer, because part of me knew was right. The firing showed me things I would have never discovered otherwise. The executives who stayed silent, the investors who only cared about stability, the people who called me only when they needed something, but it also showed me something else. The people who respected me, the employees who sent messages after I left, the investors who refused to continue without me, the people who believed in my work even when the company tried to erase me. Richard opened another folder. Inside were documents about the future of the company. He explained that Marcus was not acting alone. There was a group of investors planning to buy the company after destroying its value. They wanted a cheap takeover, and the plan was already moving forward. The public firing was supposed to be the final push. When I was removed, the company would lose investors. Toward confidence, the stock would crash, the acquisition would begin, but there was one problem they did not expect. Me, Richard told me I had a decision to make. I could walk away, take my knowledge, and start something new, or I could fight for the company I helped build. It thought about Olivia, the woman executives who ignored me, the people who watched me fall. Part of me wanted to leave them all behind. But then I remembered something. Thousands of employees worked there. People who had families, people who depended on their jobs, people who had nothing to do. The decisions made by powerful people. This was bigger than my revenge. So I agreed to help, but I had unconditioned. Everything had to be exposed publicly. No script deals, no protecting powerful people, no hiding mistakes. Richard agreed. But before I left the room, he stopped me. He told me there was something else I needed to know, something even Olivia did not know. He told me the person who originally recommended me for the company 12 years earlier was not a coincidence. Someone had chosen me. Someone had been watching me long before I knew the company existed. I asked, Richard looked at me and said, the person who brought you into this company is the same person who signed the order to remove you. It felt a chill because only one person had that kind of influence. Only one person had been there from the beginning. Olivia Grant, the woman who fired me, the woman who apologized to me, the woman who claimed she had been manipulated. Maybe she was telling the truth, or maybe she was the best actor in the entire story. I left the meeting with more questions than answers. That night, I received an anonymous message, one sentence, "Do not trust Olivia." She was never the victim. I looked at the message again and again, because suddenly I realized something terrifying. The person who destroyed my career might have been Marcus. The person controlling everything might not have been Richard. Their own mastermind might have been standing beside me the entire time, and tomorrow I was going to confront the one person who could finally reveal the truth. Olivia Grant. The hardest truth to accept is not that someone betrayed you. It is realizing that the person you wanted to trust the most might have been hiding the biggest secret of all. 4 days I had been searching for the person responsible. I blamed Richard, then I blamed David. But every path kept leading back to one person, Olivia Grant, the woman who fired me in front of the entire world, the woman who later asked for my help, the woman who claimed she was also a victim. But now I had to find out if she was telling the truth, or if I was walking directly into another trap. Arrived at Olivia's office late at night. The building was almost empty. The same place where thousands of people once worked was now quiet. The lights were dim. The halls that used to feel powerful now felt completely different. Like a castle after a war, Olivia was sitting at her desk looking through old company documents. When she saw Mesh, she immediately knew something was wrong. She asked what happened, placed the anonymous message on the table. Then I asked one question. Were you ever really manipulated? She did not answer immediately. And that silence told more than words could. For the first time since I met her, she looked afraid. She told me there were things she had never admitted, things she was ashamed of. She explained that when she became CEO, she was under enormous pressure. The company was growing faster than anyone expected. Every decision was being judged. Every mistake was being watched. And slowly she started believing that power meant never showing weakness. That was when Marcus appeared. He knew exactly what to say. He told her she was surrounded by people who wanted her position. He convinced her that loyalty was rare and that only he truly understood what she needed to do. But then she revealed something I did not expect. She admitted that Marcus did not create the fear inside her. He only used the fear that was already there. She had been afraid of losing control for years, and that fear made her easy to manipulate. I asked her the question that had been bothering me since the beginning. Why did she choose me? Why did she publicly destroy me instead of quietly removing me? Her answer was painful. Because Marcus told her a private firing would make people question her lead or ship. He convinced her that a public announcement would show strength. But she admitted there was another reason. She wanted to prove something. She wanted to prove that nobody inside the company was more important than the CEO. Even Mia looked at her, because that was the truth I had been waiting for. Marcus influenced her. But she still made the decision. She still pressed the button. She still allowed the world to watch. For the first time, she apologized without excuses. She told me she knew she could never undo what she did, but she wanted the chance to fix it. I wanted to forgive her, but forgiveness was not the same as trust, and trust was something she had destroyed. Before I left, I asked her one final question. Who sent the anonymous message? She looked at me and froze. Then she said something shocking. It was not a warning, it was a threat. She explained that whoever sent it was trying to make me doubt everyone around me, because that person knew something. If I stopped trusting my allies, I would lose. I asked who would do that. She looked toward the window. Then she said, the person who started this entire war is still inside the company. Someone we thought was helping us, someone who has been giving information to the enemy the whole time. My phone suddenly vibrated. A new message appeared. This time, there was no hidden number. Then name was visible. David Carter. My message contained only one sentence. You are looking in the wrong direction. It stared at the screen. Because after everything I discovered, after all the betrayal, after all the lies, it thought it finally understood the enemy. But maybe I had been chasing the wrong person from the beginning. Then another message arrived, a photo of a meeting, happening right now, a meeting between Marcus David and someone else, someone whose face I could not believe, because it was the one person who had promised to help me destroy the people who betrayed me. Richard Hale, the founder, the man who claimed he wanted the truth, the man who told me he believed in me, the man who may have been controlling everything from beginning. And in that moment I realized something terrifying. Everyone had areas to leave. Everyone had something to gain. And the only person I could truly depend on was myself. But tomorrow morning, the final till would begin, because I was no longer trying to save a company. I was trying to uncover who was powerful enough to manipulate everyone around me. And the answer would change everything. And the greatest betrayal is not when an enemy hurts you. It is when the person who taught you to trust people becomes the reason you stop trusting everyone. For weeks, it searched for the truth. It followed every clue, every secret conversation, every hidden agreement, every person who seemed innocent but had something to hide. And now I was standing at the final moment, the moment where everything would finally make sense. But the truth was not what I expected. Because sometimes the person controlling the game is not the person making the biggest moves. It is the person making everyone else believe they are in control. The picture on my phone changed everything. Richard Hale, Marcus Vail, David Carter, all sitting together in the same room. The three people connected to my downfall, the founder, the strategist, and my own brother. I could have reacted with anger. I could have confronted them immediately. But after everything I learned, I understood something important. Anger makes people predictable, and I was done being predictable. Instead of rushing in, I decided to watch and needed to know what they were planning. So I contacted Omion I had ignored during the entire fight, someone who had been watching from the outside, the company lawyer person who had always followed the rules, even when powerful people tried to bend them. I asked for one thing. Every document connected to the company from the last 5 years, every investment, every ownership change, every private agreement. When I finally received the files, I discovered something hidden in the paperwork. Something nobody else had noticed. Richard was not working with Marcus, he was investigating him. The meeting in the picture was not a partnership, it was a trap. Richard had discovered that Marcus was preparing to take over and was pretending to join his plan to collect evidence. But then it found something even more shocking. David was no helping Marcus. Either he was helping Richard, my own brother, had been working with the founder, but not because he wanted to destroy me, because he believed Richard was the only person who could expose Marcus. The truth was more complicated than I imagined. Everyone had made mistakes. Everyone had secrets. Everyone had their own reasons, and in the middle of it all, I asked the person who paid the price, but there was still one mystery left. Why did Olivia fire him publicly? Why did Marcus choose that exact moment? Why did everything happen at the same time? Then I found the final document, a message from Marcus to Olivia before the firing. The message is at one sense, if Ethan stays, the company falls. If Ethan leaves, the company survives. Marcus had convinced Olivia that I was the problem. But the truth was the opposite. I was the one person who could stop him. The firing was never about removing a threat. It was about removing the only person ending in his way. The next morning, we called another company meeting. The same way Olivia had called the meeting that changed my life. Thousands of employees, investors watched, the media watched. Everyone expected another disaster. Nobody expected what happened next. Olivia walked onto the stage. First, she looked at the cameras. Then she admitted everything. She admitted she made a mistake. She admitted she allowed fear and pride to control her decisions. She admitted that she destroyed the trust of someone who had spent years protecting the company. Then she stepped aside and I walked onto the stage. The same stage where I lost my career, but this time I was not there as someone being removed. I was there as someone who survived. I looked everyone watching, and I said the company did not fail because of one bad person. It failed because too many people were afraid to tell the truth. The room was silent because everyone knew it was true. The board announced that Marcus was removed from the company. The investors restored their confidence. The employees finally knew what really happened. But the biggest surprise came after the meeting. The board offered met the position of CEO, the position Olivia once held, the position everyone thought I would fight for. But I did something nobody expected. I refused, because after everything I learned, I understood that power was never what I wanted. I wanted to build something meaningful, something where people were valued before titles, something where loyalty was not punished. I created a new division inside the company, one focused on innovation and employee growth. A place where people behind the scenes finally received recognition. Months later, the e-company recovered, the stock price returned, investors came back. But the biggest change was not financial, it was cultural. People stopped pretending everything was perfect. They started admitting problems before they became disasters. Olivia stayed with the company, but not as the untouchable leader she once was. She became someone who finally understood that leadership was not about control, it was about trust. As for Marcus, had disappeared from the business world. The empire he tried to steal collapsed before he could ever own it, and my brother David did not fix everything overnight. Some betrayals leave scars, but we slowly read what was broken, because sometimes forgiveness does not mean forgetting. It means refusing to let someone else's actions control your future. Looking back at the day I was fired, live in front of the world, it thought it was the end of my life. It thought they had taken everything from me, my career, my reputation, my purpose. But I was wrong. That day was not the end. It was the moment. It finally stopped building someone else's empire and started building my own. Because sometimes the door that closes in you, our face is the same door that forces you to bend a better path to end.